Morning, Dave.
Good morning. If you're just joining us, if you could mute yourself, that would be greatly appreciated.
Sorry.
No, you're fine, Ash. Come on. All right. And sorry if there was any passcode issues, but we'll fix that for next time. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. So we are so excited for this webinar this morning, and we thank you for being here. This is the first of a three-part spring webinar series, so I'll tell you more about those details later. Just for some housekeeping logistics, if you have questions during this webinar, you can put them in the chat, and there'll be plenty of time at the end for questions. For those of you that haven't met me yet, my name is Bradley Spiegel, and I'm the Building Outdoor Communities Program Manager with the Made by Mountains Partnership. And I'm going to turn it over to Amy to introduce our speakers for the day.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here. I'm Amy Allison. I'm the director for the Made by Mountains Partnership. So we're really excited about this conversation today as we look to further align with partners across the region to leverage our natural resources in a sustainable way to enhance the quality of life for our local residents and visitors to the area, and for collective opportunities to grow our local and regional economies. So this conversation will highlight how the newly released Pisgah Nantahala Forest Plan can intersect with the work that we're doing with the Building Outdoors Community Program, and to kind of find collaborative ways for trail planning and sustainable recreation. So to kick off this conversation, I want to pass it over to James Malonis, who's with us today. James is the U.S. Forest Service the deputy supervisor for the National Forest Service all across North Carolina. So James, I'll let you take it away from here.
I think you're muted.
Let's see here. We'll get.
Okay, got us?
Yes, we got you.
So hi everybody, good to be here with y'all. I'm James Malonis. I'm the forest supervisor for the National Forest in North Carolina. There's 4 forests that we manage here in North Carolina: the Nantahala and Pisgah in the mountains, the Uwharrie in the Piedmont, and the Croatan on the coast. About 1.2 million acres of some of the most biodiverse and visited national forests in the country. So we know how important these forests are to you all here and the communities and the different groups that use the forests. I'll go around the room in here real quick with me.
Sure. Morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Fitzsimmons. I'm the Deputy Forest Supervisor at National Forest, North Carolina. Thanks for joining us and thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, and I want to jump in real quick and correct myself. So I said that James was a deputy, and that's an incorrect statement on the slide. So James is the forest supervisor, and then glad that Kevin's with us as well, the deputy supervisor.
Also here, Shane Fires. I'm the partnership specialist at the SO office, helping out James, Kevin, and Michelle with partners and community outreach. Looking forward to today's presentation. Thanks for having us.
Good morning, I'm Michelle Aldridge. I'm the Planning and NEPA Staff Officer and the Planning Team Leader. And we also have another teammate who's joining us remotely. Eric Cruz is joining us. He is our Recreation Program Manager, and he'll be available to answer questions later in the presentation.
Okay, so I'll kind of give a bit of an overview, and then Michelle will give some more specifics, and looking for some conversation. So as Amy said, we recently completed the new plan for the Nantahala and Pisgah. I know a lot of you spent a lot of years and time with us working through that. And so we're really glad that we're now moving into working with communities to put all these great ideas into practice across the Nantahala and Pisgah. And we know in particular that we knew that the recreation components of the plan we're really excited about. We have a lot of concepts in the plan that really help us to make sure that we are moving towards a sustainable trail network, that we're doing that in a way that is in collaboration and connected to the work that you all are doing in communities across Western North Carolina, so that the work that is being done around outdoor economies and things are in sync with the work that we're doing on the forests, because we recognize that, if we spend all of our time kind of on the forest making a great trail network, that's great. But if it's not done in a way that's really interwoven with what you all are looking to do within your communities, we're not going to see those economic benefits and the sustainable sustainability that we'd like to see, because we know that we need the work of partners and communities working together in order to develop, maintain the trail networks and all the infrastructure and things that go along with that. And so we're really excited about how those sections of the plan that sets that up. And part of what we've done in the plan is that recognize that different parts of the forest are used in different ways, or what we call geographic areas. So what we might be doing, like on the Pisgah Ranger District in the Davidson River Corridor, where we have a lot of developed recreation and a lot of use, is going to be different than what might be what we want to work on together in a backcountry area on the Nantahala, for instance. And so we recognize that there's different ways that the forest is used across the Western North Carolina, and different ways that we want to interact with the communities around that. And so we're just really excited that Made by Mountains, the work that is being done with all the communities around building outdoor economies. So it's a great opportunity for us to work together towards those same goals. And part of what I want to say is that we know that we can only do this work together, because all of us have limited time and capacity. But if we're all kind of moving together with that shared vision, we can do a lot together. And so Michelle's going to go into more specifics about the sections of the plan, what they mean, and how we move forward. We recognize the importance of collaborative trail planning in a lot of areas where we have kind of a mismatch in terms of having those trail and opportunities available and what's currently there. There's kind of a supply demand kind of an issue, and that manifests itself sometimes, like Max Patch, a couple of years ago, places getting overrun, or we see a bunch of user created trails that are causing erosion problems and user conflict. And so, we want to work together towards creating that sustainable trail network that's going to serve us into the future. So I'll stop there and turn it over to Michelle.
Thank you, James. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and get this PowerPoint running.
I can also share it too, if you need help.
That would be great. It's given me a challenge here. Thank you. Well, while that's loading, I'll go ahead and get started. So as James mentioned, this revised plan is our strategic plan for the next generation of forest management. It's the framework we're going to use to address complex challenges, climate change, invasive species, impacts from development on adjacent private lands, and high levels of visitor use. And sustaining our forest ecosystems, making sure they're healthy and resilient is critical to making sure we're taking good care of the land. And And this plan that we're sharing today was developed and shaped by public comments and the interactions we've had with tribal governments and others, state governments, county governments, and we listened and incorporated diverse voices in this process. As a result of that input, including a lot of input from the recreation community, we added objectives to reflect what we could do with the help of others. And we really strengthened plan direction around sustainable recreation, and added a lot of information about places and uses that are important. Next slide, please. So this is that overview of the 4 forests that James spoke about. So today we're primarily focusing on the Nantahala and Pisgah in the mountains, but we also manage the Uwharrie National Forest in the Piedmont of the state and the Croatan, which is adjacent to the Atlantic. Next slide, please. So the Nantahala and Pisgah that we're focusing on today cover the 18 counties and just over 1 million acres in Western North Carolina. I know you're familiar with a lot of the forests, but I thought it would be helpful to give a little bit of context so that we're starting with the same starting point about the different resources that we manage here on the forest. So the green that you see here on the map is the national forest, and you can see that it is a checkerboard pattern of ownership mixed in with different private land owners, and then we're adjacent to Great Smoky Mountain National Park. The Blue Ridge Parkway runs through the National Forest, and also the Appalachian Trail and the National Historic Trail of Tears. And we're also adjacent to the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indian Qualla boundary. Next slide, please. So this is a really a rich landscape, ecologically, socially, recreationally, and some of that goes back to the starting point and our role here on the landscape. So the Forest Service is carrying on the legacy work of others who started thousands of years before we arrived, with Native American use of the area dating back more than 11,000 years, where the forests were the home of the Cherokee, the Creek, and the Catawba peoples. And there's a lot of rich cultural history in this area. So a couple of things that we would highlight, though, are the relationship to the land when the Forest Service became the manager of it. So just over 100 years ago, this land was not the beautiful forest that you think of when you look out and you see it today. It was largely cut over, and you can see the picture here of when we acquired the first tracts under the Weeks Act for the Pisgah National Forest. And so we've really been stewarding this land for more than 100 years. And we have also the first forestry school in America based here in what is now the Pisgah National Forest. So just an important legacy that we're carrying on here in Western North Carolina. Next slide, please. James referenced the incredibly biodiverse forest, and that is just couldn't be simplified. I mean, we have the opportunity to take care of some of the richest biodiverse ecosystems globally, honestly, and especially in the National Forest system. So here in the Blue Ridge Mountains, this is just a cross section of the different ecosystems that we manage on the forest, 11 different ecozones, depending on where you are, on the topography of the mountains, the degree of sunlight and the moisture conditions. In our revised plan, we're recognizing that each of these forest types has different needs, and that we're going to manage spruce fir forest very differently than shortleaf pine. We have a lot of rare species, more than 140 species of trees, and 339 species of conservation concern that we manage for when we think about the national forests. We also know that because of the history of the area and the land use of the area, most of the forest is between 80 and 120 years old. So again, much of
Did we lose her sound?
Yes, I think we
Okay.
did. Let's give just a second and see
Okay.
if they pop back on.
We're just getting
1 minute,
so
please.
interesting.
We'll solve some technical issues.
No problem. I'll put the slide back up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm
gotcha.
thankful, Bradley, that you got the PowerPoint going there. Remember
No
that internet
problem.
isn't so perfect? Well, thanks. I hopefully I didn't lose too much, but to tell you about our ecological diversity. We're managing, thinking about a lot of those different needs of ecosystems, and also in the face of climate change, making sure we have a really resilient forest. Next slide, please. In addition to having incredible ecological diversity, we are one of the most visited national forests in the country. And that comes with some amazing opportunities and also some challenges. Just to try and put it all in one slide here in a snapshot is difficult to do. But more than 6.4 million visitors across the 4 national forests, one of the most visited in the system. We've got the largest outfitter and guide programs in the country. And we support a lot of economy. We support a lot of the work that you all do in communities. And we know that vegetation is likely to continue. And that brings, like I said, some of the challenges that you see here with overuse or use that's not, where we need to do more managing of that use, considering the total amount of people on a spot at any one time. And then challenges like climate change. You can see this is Tropical Storm Fred here impacting the Sliding Rock area. We want to get out in front of those opportunities and also be thinking about how we can keep up with demand and support that interest through a sustainable program. So we have updated that in our revised plan. The plan that we were operating under was written in 1994 and didn't even have mountain biking as a regular use on the forest at that time. So many things have changed, and it was really a time for us to bring those new ideas front and center and be thinking about all of the different uses and how we need to manage them into the future. So in our revised plan, we focus on those ecosystems and all the different ecosystems that people need. We focus on how we can work together and how we will partner to get our work accomplished. And we really incorporated those ideas we've heard from others, as well as emphasizing sustainable recreation. So let's get into the meat of it a little bit. Go to the next slide, please. So I know the plan is a giant document and it's very hard to wrap your mind around all the things that it entails. So I have a reader's guide on the website that's only 4 pages, much shorter and easier to digest. And I wanted to draw your attention to all the topics that you see in the plan. It's no coincidence that we're starting with public involvement and community connections before we even get into the resources, because working together is the foundation from which everything else emerges. And then we've got all the resources from air to wildlife and all the topics in between. And we'll spend a little bit of time talking about these places of interest that I think are going to be most important for you. Next slide, please. So the revised plan really builds around 4 themes. These are things that everyone gets behind. You can see coming from that context, how we are really focused on connecting people to the land, sustaining healthy ecosystems, providing clean and abundant water to the 4 states that depend on the water that comes from the forest, and doing all of that through the lens of partnering with others. Next slide, please. So recreation at the heart of your interest here today, and knowing that it plays a significant role promoting physical, mental, and spiritual health and enhancing community identity. The plan protects high visitor use areas and national recreation trails. We've got a new management area called Interface. It's a new zone of the forest. And that's where we emphasize high quality visitor experience, access, scenery, and interpretation. And we'll spend more time later in the presentation talking about the specific things we're doing related to sustainable trails and working with recreation clubs, volunteer groups, and others. We know that this is important to local economies and tourism in Western North Carolina. Next slide, please. In addition to providing habitat and supporting all of our aquatic biodiversity, the forest also provides drinking water to many communities here in Western North Carolina and the adjacent states. Next slide, please. And then working together with others is the hallmark of the plan. A couple of excerpts I would highlight for you that the plan says, these are quotes. The public involvement with stakeholders and local communities provides opportunities for a greater sense of ownership and pride in the forest. Proactive efforts reach traditional and non-traditional users and lead to greater citizen understanding, appreciation, advocacy, and participation in forest stewardship and conservation. Another quote from the plan, one of our goals is that the forests contribute to economic vitality of the region by providing benefits, maintaining local cultures and traditions, connecting people to the land, and contributing to greater quality of life. Another goal that you can relate to and help us with is by expanding access to the outdoors for all people, the Forest Service builds personal experiences that become the foundation of stewardship. We know that the forests are uniquely positioned to help young Americans reconnect with nature and find pathways to employment. We have an objective in our forest plan that says that every other year we'll host a discussion with interested Western North Carolina governments and their economic development offices and talk about ways that we can support local jobs, attract tourism, and encourage coordination on public health and safety issues. Next slide, please. So I know that 1 million acres across 18 counties is really hard to wrap your mind around. And so we went ahead and broke the forest into 12 different geographic areas to really emphasize the sense of place unique to different parts of the forest. And within each of these geographic areas, we established goals related to the 4 themes we described a couple slides ago. So each one of these, it gets more specific. It's like a miniature chapter in each place of the forest. And there we can talk about what's possible when we work on specific goals. Next slide, please. So this shows you what we have for each of the geographic areas. It gets more specific. So this is a picture of one of the context maps that we have. And here we're looking not just at Forest Service lands, but the adjacent lands to see the opportunity to connect with other conservation land or other public land. And then, like I said, each geographic area has goals for each of the 4 themes. So here's a couple of goals I've excerpted here for example. So the Fontana Lake geographic area, it has a goal under the theme of connecting people to the land to emphasize water-based recreation around Santilla and Fontana lakes, provide access to the shore and water, and support recreational boating, fishing, camping, and trails. And that's very different than you might see over on the Unicoi Mountain geographic area, where there the goal relates to supporting certain types of recreation experience, including regional and national attractions like the Cherahela Skyway, the Appalachian Trail, Joyce-Kilmer Slick Rock Wilderness, and Snowbird Backcountry areas. So recognizing that the way we recreate in the Nantahala Gorge is different than the way we recreate in Shope Creek is different than the way we recreate down near the Pisgah 276 corridor. We're trying to bring that sense of place and goals to different portions of the forest, and to see what community goals are and the local government goals are in these areas, so that we can really bring that connection from the forest to the adjacent lands. The next thing I wanted to highlight is just some of the elements of sustainable recreation in the plan. So we have, it says 1,500 miles of trails. That's just on the Nantahala and Pisgah. It's 2,000 miles of trails across the entire national forest in North Carolina, from the mountains to the coast. And so we, in this revised plan, looked at where that heaviest use is, looked at where we wanted to focus on concentrated recreation use of developed and dispersed sites. And we put that into a zone called interface, where we can really emphasize that user experience. And we also have a different management area for the Appalachian Trail, which I wanted to bring to your attention. And we continue to manage the Appalachian Trail with the ATC, the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, and the partner clubs that maintain the AT. Next slide, please. Oh, you can go ahead and advance. Keep going. Thank you. So some elements of the plan that I thought you would want to know about. We'll spend more time on the sustainable trail piece, but also the emphasis on loop opportunities. We call for the development of a climbing management plan and non-commercial mineral collection planning, so that we can know where those places are where people can do non-commercial mineral collection sustainably. Also developing a road maintenance plan, and then things like our conservation education program, including expanding the suite of environmental ed to reach diverse audiences. Next slide, please. You can go ahead and fill this slide out. Thank you. So this is the, oh, there's one more bullet to come. Thanks. So this is the meat of our sustainable trail framework. You know, we received a lot of comments from folks on how to manage trails, and we recognize that the current trail network doesn't meet the need for equestrian and bicycle trails in all areas of the forest, and that we have an abundance of user-created trails. So the plan provides this framework, and it particularly looking at the second bullet here, the plan says any new construction of trails or the adoption of unauthorized routes has to be done collaboratively, has to use modern design principles, and then you have to have one of the following conditions apply. You have to have either a commitment to long-term maintenance by a volunteer or partner group, or you have to be resolving a critical health and safety need, or a known supply and demand issue that's identified in one of the geographic area goals, or you have to be offsetting unauthorized trails or decommissioning them, because we just don't have enough right now to support all of the ideas where new trails could be. We really need to focus on making sure our trail network is sustainable, that the places are in the right place, that we've got that long-term commitment to maintenance, and that we're really resolving public health and safety needs. In addition, we've got an objective to conduct collaborative trail planning on the forest every 5 or so years. And we have this trail strategy that we'll build from. And there are specific strategies identified in the plan for how we might engage communities in that process. There are 4 geographic areas where we have a known supply and demand discrepancy, where there's more supply than there is demand. And so we have goals around those 4 geographic areas to really focus on right-sizing the trail system and making it as sustainable as we can. A little more on this in the next slide, please. So thinking about those user-created trails, I think it's important for you to have that context that, remember those 1,500 miles of trails I referenced earlier? Well, and then we've got 500 miles on the Croatan and Uwharrie. Total for those 2,000 miles of trail, our annual operating budget is approximately 130,000 acres, which translates to $65 per mile each year. But contracted trail maintenance can cost $20,000 a mile or more. So we can't afford to maintain what we have, and we can't afford to build new trails that aren't sustainable. So there are hundreds of miles of unauthorized trail, such as these pictured here in these heat map images. Many of these are unsustainable and causing resource impacts. So using Strava to show us where folks go, we're able to see where people travel, either on foot or on bike. And the brighter the line, the heavier the traffic pattern. This is the Graveyard Fields area on the Pisgah, is the left image. And I believe that Shope Creek on the right, where in fact we don't have any trails in the Shope Creek area. None of these are system trails. This is all user created activity. So in the revised plan, that's an area where we're calling to have a more sustainable trail network. Because right now people are just out there making trails in an unsustainable way. It has an impact on water quality and our natural resources when that happens. We really need to be thinking about how do we design the trails sustainably and put them in the right place, so that we don't have things like this map of unsustainable trails. Oh, back Irish Creek area. Thank you, Deirdre. So go ahead, you can fill that slide out for me. Thank you. So help us say yes. We know that there's a lot of interest and people want to build trails. We know that everybody's looking at the amazing example of what's happening in Old Fort right now, and everybody wants to be like Old Fort. So here with a picture that I borrowed from the Old Fort G5 Trail Collective, if that is a shining star, what are some factors that helped Old Fort to be successful? And what are some of those transferable factors that you could bring to the Forest Service if you're interested in talking about a trail project? You know, in order for us to agree to new trails in the Old Fort area, we had to ensure that they could be maintained through a long-term agreement, and that they would contribute not just to a trail need, not just to a recreational need, but to a broader community goal with widespread and local government support. So thinking about that, we've got, you know, if you can provide a community asset that leads to multiple interests, linking to that broader strategy with local community involvement. Like I said, not just a trail project, but a multifaceted economic and recreational initiative. Close to population centers. We've got lots of places we could work on trails, but our interest is really helping to ensure that we're providing access to people and communities. So we're not interested in building new trails out in the backcountry. We're really looking at how do we connect to communities close to population centers and to increase equitable access for all. We want to be brought in during pre-planning stages, thinking about the project in phases, not this big gulp of, you know, 40 miles. That's not going to happen if you're not thinking about it in slow and steady and in a phased kind of way. And be thinking about non-traditional partners and all the different partners that you can bring in to multiple levels of engagement. So for example, emergency services, the Catawba Falls work that we're doing right now on Catawba, that really was started through conversations they were having with emergency services about their need to have access to be able to get to folks easily, or to actually reduce the incidence of injury and rescue. So think about those others that you might not be thinking of when you think of recreation partners, or other ways that we can benefit those underserved populations. The Forest Service wants to be a partner, but there's no need for us to be the lead. It's a community effort. And also, to the extent that you can look to non-national forest sites to be the basis for infrastructure, things like toilets, drinking water, picnic facilities. A lot of those are going to be easier to happen if they're not on the national forest. If the Forest Service would require a long-term maintenance strategy for all those. So, you know, if there's a way you can tap into other parks or other community assets and not be trying to put all of that on the Forest Service, that would be great. So this the G5 Trail Collective that you probably heard of for the Old Fort area, that's a 501c3 nonprofit initiative powered by Camp Greer, and that's in partnership with the Forest Service, local communities, and recreational trail user groups. But G5 stands for the Grandfather District and covers 5 counties: McDowell, Burke, Caldwell, Avery, Watauga. And so that was conceived in the town of Old Fort as a solution to the lack of funding for trail maintenance and trail development projects, but it's become much larger and it serves a much greater need with community involvement and rural economy. So if those are the factors to success, these are some watch out situations. Please do not go out and construct unauthorized trails on NFS lands, National Forest Service lands. That is a violation of law. We have to ensure that we're meeting endangered species requirements, taking care of our water and our cultural resources. And a trail really doesn't work just anywhere. We need to have it well designed. Also, we have to do an effects analysis and talk about those effects and disclose them to the public before we even put a shovel on Forest Service land. Also, we ask that you not create trails informally and then come to us and say, hey, look, it's already there. Can you just adopt it? No, 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 that's not the intent either. We want to be there from the start, planning them in the right place and mitigating those unauthorized trail impacts. That takes away from the budget we have. So if we have $130,000 to cover 2,000 trails, then anytime we have to spend money in managing a mile of user created trail, that takes away from the money that we have to maintain the trails we want to be maintaining. So this is just to maintain trust and have us work together in successful partnership. Also, we ask that you not commit to that we would build a trail. We've been in those situations where it's been announced, oh, this trail is going to be built and it's going to go through the Forest Service. And we're like, whoa, wait a minute. We didn't know. You got to talk with us first. There's a lot of things we got to think through. And same with fundraising, and then coming to us with a whole band of support behind you, but you haven't talked to us first. It's all comes back to that communication starting early. And similar to the best practices I referenced earlier, beginning with that end in mind, be thinking about how you can be meeting the needs of multiple interests, not just a single interest group or an isolated experience. We're not interested in really focusing on, a quarter mile of this amazing place that you can get a 5-star mountain bike experience, or that alone isn't going to sell us on the project. We're interested in that broader connection and opportunity for as many users as we can. And that means multiple use or multiple types of recreation. And we do want to partner with you on long-term maintenance. That means that we're looking for organizations that have stability and longevity and are going to be here with us through this 20-30 year planning cycle. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that there are 4 geographic areas where we have a known supply-demand issue. And this is what the plan recognizes based on the thousands of comments we received during the plan development. It doesn't mean that every single trail or every single opportunity is fully captured here. We know that you may have some other places that you would like to talk through, and we welcome that discussion. But I wanted to bring to your attention the 4 geographic areas where we know that we have some needs. The Bald Mountain geographic area over in Hot Springs and Harmon Den, the Black Mountains in Big Ivy, Shope Creek, which we talked through already, in South Toe, the Eastern Escarpment related to Wilson Creek, Boone Fork, Back Irish Creek, and then the Highland Domes, the Panthertown Valley. So I gave you a little bit of an example of one of our management approaches, which is how the plan says that we will work together. And it just talks about that collaborative trail planning at geographic or district ranger scale to address deferred maintenance needs, and talks about some of the things we could talk through. It's a very long management approach. There's even more information in the plan, but ultimately just knowing that when we get to that local level, there's going to be a lot more that we're able to work through than we would ever be able to tackle at the broad plan level. Next slide, please. And ultimately this, as you can see, begins with conversations that happen at the local level. So I wanted you to have the contact information of the district offices here in your, that are closest to you. I should have probably put the cities on here, but the Appalachian district is in Mars Hill, and the Grandfather is in Nebo. The Pisgah is in Brevard. The Nantahala is in Franklin. The Chioa is in Robbinsville, and the Tusquity is in Murphy. So, I recommend you talk to the office closest to you. And then today, you've got James, Kevin, Eric, myself, and Shane here to answer any questions that you may have, as well as a link to the website for more information on the forest plan. I'll pass back to Bradley now. Thanks for being my PowerPoint helper.
Well, yeah, we're going to let Amy do a little facilitated discussion here, but wow, that was a great presentation. And it's kind of cool to see. These are concepts that we've been talking about since we launched the Building Outdoor Communities program last fall. And it's really interesting to see it all come to life. Like these are some real issues that, like, how can we partner in the beginning? That's a theme that's really that's coming pretty high as a low-hanging fruit. Like, let's just start the conversation as early as possible with the Forest Service, and just know who to contact with the Forest Service. And that's something that, you know, we're trying to create a bridge for that too. So we can, if we need to have, you know, specific geographic discussions, we can definitely help to facilitate that going forward. So Amy, why don't we transition to you for some questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to encourage anyone here to drop any questions that they might have in the chat so that we can be sure to answer those. And I know that that was super enlightening, and appreciate Michelle mentioning that there's kind of that 4-page reader guide to the Forest Service. If somebody, maybe Shane or somebody on your team, wants to drop that into the chat so folks have a quick link to it so they can get in there and learn a little bit more, that would be fantastic. So we make sure we're getting the most recent one. I love, you know, your comments. So you mentioned the G5 Trail Collective and the work that's happening in Old Fort that's getting a lot of highlights right now, even though we know there's a ton of great work going on across the whole region. But some of the things that Michelle pointed out there are so great about kind of what y'all are looking for, where it's, you know, close to a population, it's a multifaceted economic and recreation initiative, and it connects communities. And I think that that's gonna really get folks on this call excited, because that's really the work that we're trying to do with building outdoor communities, is think about how recreation leads to economic growth and how we do that in a sustainable way, and really connecting our public lands and our trail systems to our main streets and to our economic corridors. So I'm sure folks will be thinking about ways that they can kind of hit those priorities for y'all as they're developing these plans. So I've got a question in here from Dennis. It says, has the new plan changed the goals for land acquisition for recreation and access? So if somebody wants to jump in there.
Yeah, this is James. In terms of our land acquisition program, the plan doesn't really change the goals too much on land acquisition. You know, we work very closely with our land trust communities to, just like was mentioned, we're thinking about consolidating ownership, critical access points. Those are the things that are always at the top of the list when we're looking at acquisition for National Forest System land. So I think, you know, that's been our goal, and we've actually been very successful as a national forest for many years. There's a national competition for that limited pool of money, and we do very well in North Carolina with our acquisition program because of the work of our partners along with us to make that happen.
Great, thanks, James. Another question: which districts are going to manage which geographic areas? And I know there was kind of a map that you had up. I'm sure there's not a quick answer to that. And one of the examples they gave was the grandfather, and what about Black Mountain?
Yeah, we have, sorry, go ahead, Eric.
Okay, so in some cases, our geographic areas may straddle a couple of districts, and in those instances, the area within the district boundary would still, the trails would still be managed by the district, but the geographic area would be you know, what we analyze in our collaborative trail planning. And the reason we broke it out by geographic area is because when each geographic area has different characteristics of the land base and how the land is used. So it provides different types of experiences for trail users, but in some cases it does straddle 2 or more districts.
Great. So Eric, if folks have questions about that in specific areas that they're working in, or would you be the right person for them to reach out to about that?
Sure, that would be fine.
Okay, thank you. And so for everyone who's on the webinar right now, we are recording this and we'll share it. So I know that there was a slide at the end there that had contact numbers. So I'd encourage you to reach out to folks and get the right person, because as we've said all along with this work, and as it was reiterated here, bringing folks to the table at the beginning of the conversation so they're a part of the planning along the way There we go. Thanks, Brad. That's the way we're going to be really successful in getting this work done, not making a plan and then calling in Forest Service or other land managers in the area to tell them what you're thinking about. So let's think about having everybody there from the get-go. Here's another question in regards to sustainable trail requirements. Do these requirements apply to new trails only, or will this be retroactive to existing trails?
Our ultimate goal is to bring the entire trail system up to a sustainable condition. And in many instances, that is going to either require heavy maintenance on the existing routes or minor relocations, or in some instances, pretty significant relocations on existing system trails. The standards that we try to manage to that are our desired conditions would apply to both existing trails and newly constructed trails. In newly constructed trails, we have the distinct advantage of being able to build purpose-built trails that can accommodate a particular type of use and are designed to be more sustainable.
Great. And then, kind of a follow-up to that was, what does this mean to the access for the trail networks that have been user created?
Well, when we go through the geographic area collaborative trail planning on about a 5-year cycle, as Michelle mentioned, we will look at the supply and demand needs for those areas. If there's more demand for a certain type of use than there is a supply of national forest system trails, we would look at how to address that. And part of that could be the adoption of user created trails, although we certainly do not want people to think that is a backdoor into getting their own pet trail into our network. As one of the slides that Michelle showed was, that we do not want people building user created trails and asking us to adopt them. We have an inventory of the existing user created trails. So if we see new ones popping up, we'll know that has occurred in recent years. But yes, we will be looking at sustainable user created trails to potentially add them to the system. That's many elements that we're looking at.
Amy, this is James. Just to add in here, we know this is a huge undertaking, as Michelle went through the numbers. Things aren't going to change overnight, but we all have recognized, I think you all have seen places that are really, where we have major issues with erosion and other and things and resource damage. And so it's really important. So for instance, kind of a little micro scale, the Show Creek area, which is one of the, closest spots to Asheville on the northeast side of Asheville, is a good example. We don't have any official system trails up there, but there's a spider web of stuff up there. And so partners like Wild South are helping us to identify how folks are using that. And then that's going to help inform how we create a sustainable, well thought out network, as Eric was mentioning. And hopefully that then means that we were able to then provide that good experience. We have partners helping us to maintain those trails. And then we work on, putting to bed some of these trails that are, scattershot throughout there that are, that have been made over time. But that's not going to happen overnight across the Nantahala and Pisgah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it was eye-opening to me. I think, Michelle, you mentioned that the previous forest plan didn't include mountain biking at all. Is that right? And so when we think about what a hotbed our region is for mountain biking right now, and just having to, and all of these other recreation opportunities that are, coming to the forefront. As you said, none of this is going to happen overnight, and that's extremely understandable. It's a huge undertaking. So I love this next question because I think it, highlights a lot of the work we're doing to bring folks together. The question is, how engaged is the Forest Service with other land managers, such as the Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation, state parks, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's really key as we look at working together, and that's part of why we use those geographic areas. We recognize, as Michelle mentioned, that there's a lot of different ownerships, a lot of different public land from the state, from the Park Service, as was mentioned, the Qualla boundary, and then other public city and county lands. And so it really has to be a collective effort on looking across those different ownerships to do it right. And that's why it's great having Made by Mountains and all you working on these things and working towards that shared vision.
That's great. Okay, I see two more here. I know we're running close on time, so we'll try to get through those. And then if anyone else has other questions, they can get them to Brad or I, and we can funnel them to Forest Service or reach back out through those numbers you see. So the first of our, last questions is there a standard maintenance agreement for newly constructed trails as part of this plan?
We use a variety of different agreements for particular situations. So there are templates that we can start from, but each situation would be unique. Great.
And then the last one we'll cover here is what is the best partnership model for volunteer trail maintenance commitments from U.S. Forest Service perspective? We've talked about G5 and know there are a lot of other groups, SORBA, et cetera. Can you speak to the need for increased volunteer maintenance involvement and what's working well and what's not working well?
Everyone's looking at me in this room, so I'll take this one. I do a lot of these scenarios, and anyone else, please jump on. I want to focus a little bit just on what Michelle said. Help us say yes. Like when we talk about all those partners, all these different things you can talk to, that someone's saying, like going to the all lands approach, the state partners, the local county partners, emergency services, those non-traditional scenarios. The more you have, the merrier. The goal for the most successful partnerships is, can the partnership survive the chair? When I say the chair, I mean if a key person leaves, and this is from our history, we've learned this the hard way. This is the worst case scenario, which there's a lot of this in North Carolina and throughout the nation, where one or two people are really the ones that are holding things together, and then they leave or retire or go somewhere else, and then the Forest Service is left holding the bag. And we're trying to maintain this scenario in that sense. It's kind of like a rising tide raises all boats. When you have a diversity of partners in the group, at different levels of government to nonprofits to different scenarios, you've got a lot of leverage in different areas. And that helps us say yes very quickly. And that's where if someone does leave, there's someone there to help kind of land the plane on the other side, because there's a collective way of operation, long-term operation. Pisgah Conservancy is a good example of that. Looking at those long-term operational needs on how they operate across the landscape.
And I'll just add on this question about volunteers and how that works. We have so many great partners that do and have done for a very long time organizing volunteers, right? So ATC and the trail clubs, I mean, that's the model for the Appalachian Trail. It's worked pretty darn well for 100 years almost. And so, Kevin mentioned Pisgah Conservancy. We have IMBA and SORBA. We have a lot of groups that help to organize volunteers. What doesn't work very well, if you and a few friends came to one of the district rangers and said, hey, we're ready to volunteer, we simply don't have the capacity to manage individual or small groups of volunteers. And so as much as you can work with those well-established groups or like the G5 or others where they're helping to provide that umbrella, and we can have one agreement with an organization, and then that organization is able to organize volunteers in a good way. And I want to mention, I know Deirdre is on and Julie White. They've been awesome for many years, helping us develop these portions of the plan and doing awesome work organizing folks on the forest. So a lot of great folks on this call that have great experience on doing that well.
Yep, and think about where to house that point of contact, as James mentioned, for these volunteer groups. I mean, I've worked in places where the Chamber of Commerce has been a key component of maintaining that scenario and different. So to think non-traditionally and don't think it's got to be so-and-so or some like friends of whoever. There's a lot of opportunities. And so really think through that, who's got the infrastructure and ability to be that point of contact and help us say yes.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And for folks on the call, maybe an opportunity to be a funnel for volunteers, because we know that that's so important to have that group of folks in each community to really help the work get done. And, you know, we hope that this conversation is a starting point for folks maybe that aren't working together yet, and an opportunity for communities to work with Forest Service and have a really good contact there at this point. And I just want to go back to kind of how James started this conversation is, you know, this work can only get done if we work together, and that's how we work faster and smarter and really get things done in a strategic and sustainable way. So really appreciate everyone being here on the call. Thank you to everyone from the Forest Service who's been here to answer questions. And I'm going to pass it back to Brad now to kind of close this up.
Thank you, Amy. So I just wanted to give everyone on the call a couple announcements that you're probably familiar with. So I said earlier that this is the first webinar of a 3-part series. Next month, we're going to do lessons learned from Rutherford Bound with Don Kaysen. I know a lot of you have asked, like, what did Rutherford County do to get kind of all the partners, all the municipalities and people on board to fund outdoor infrastructure? So Don is going to talk a lot about that. And then in May, we're going to have Kim Williams and Spencer Finch from Alta Planning and Design talk about state and federal funding opportunities and what you all could be doing to be investment ready to to attract the funds that are coming down from the state and the government and the country. So, and then if you know, this is we're so excited. This week we're actually going to announce the conference tracks for the Outdoor Economy Conference. It's the 5th one, and early bird tickets are available until May 1st. That's tier 1. And then tier 2 of early bird is July 1st. So stay tuned for more updates with that. And with that, you know where to find me. Feel free to email me if you need connections to any of the information that was provided today. It was so great, again, to see kind of the work that's happening at the local level and then the work happening at the forest level kind of collide. And let's just do the best we can to work together and figure out how we can solve some of these issues before they become problems. So we appreciate everyone being here and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.